Hello everyone, Rain here, and today I'm gonna explain how you can use Crafter from Refined Storage to automatically craft things. I will explain how you can use it for normal recipes as well as for processing resources and even for something like automating a refined storage solderer. So let's get started. First of all, I've got a basic setup in here, a controller, a crafting grid, and the first block you will need to get started with this whole thing is a pattern grid. This is where you're going to be making your patterns, your recipes that will be later auto-crafted. So let's say I want to be able to automatically craft 1K storage parts. So what I will do is I will get all of the materials necessary. So for example, it's one silicon in each corner and just go on like this, or use not enough items, press this button, and as long as you have materials, magic will happen, and that's it. We are almost done. Make some patterns, add them to this slot, and you will be able to press this button. So now we have a pattern for crafting of 1K storage part. So for normal recipes, unlike for processing, as you may have noticed, I have those crafters pointing towards very specific blocks. But for normal crafting, I find that as long as Crafter is just connected to your system, everything should be working just fine. So craft a Crafter, place it on a cable or just adjacent to a controller or something, and place this pattern inside. And now I can craft it, except obviously I don't have any materials. So let's put some materials in, and as long as you have materials, you will be able to craft it. So let's make 10 of them. Start, and as you can see, it's crafting it pretty fast as well. But you gotta remember, you need to have all of the materials in your system, or you need to be able to make materials. So let's say we don't have any quartz enriched iron, actually, but we do have some nether quartz and iron ingot, except it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because the system doesn't know how to make it. It just doesn't know how to make any quartz enriched iron. Right, so let's tell the system how to do it. Let's make another pattern for this, for the quartz enriched iron, just like we did before, and create pattern. So once I add it in here, the system will know how to craft quartz enriched iron. And if I'm gonna try to craft it, if I'm gonna try to craft something that needs quartz enriched iron, even if I don't have it, system knows how to make it. It knows that I need 1 nether quartz, 3 iron ingots, and if I start the process, it will make everything necessary all by itself. But 1K storage part also needs some glass and some silicon, which we can only make using a furnace. So let's try to teach our system how to make those things as well. So for that, we will need to create a processing pattern. Now this is where it's a little bit different for 1.12 and for other versions. If you're playing on 1.12, this is what it will look like. Just press processing button and you will be able to make a processing recipes. If you're playing on 1.10 or 1.11, you will need to create a separate block, which is called, I think, processing pattern something, whatever. And it's going to do the same thing. So yeah, in order to make what we need in here, we will need some sand and we will need some glass. So here, not only you need to define what you will be using to create this recipe, you also need to define an output just like this. So here we go. Now I have a pattern that says 1 sand. If you input 1 sand into a block, which I will define right now by placing this pattern into this crafter. So I'm gonna rebuild this setup as well to show you how to build it. But I just want to emphasize first of all that it doesn't understand if this recipe will work or not, right? All it knows is that I gotta place 1 sand and I have to expect 1 piece of glass from it. So for example, I can just mess up the recipe completely. I can do something like this. And now it thinks that if it uses 2 glass, 1 sand and 30 1K storage parts, it will make 1 glass, which doesn't make any sense. But if you make some kind of a mistake in your pattern, the system wouldn't know any better. It will try to use those resources and it will fail and you will not get what you want. So be careful while assembling the recipes. And also there is another 2 blocks in here which are not necessary, but you might as well make them. So first of all, this is a crafting manager which can manage all of your crafters quite conveniently. So as you can see, all of my crafters are connected to it, the one near coke oven and every other one. So I can conveniently move my patterns between them, as well as just remove patterns and add some other patterns to it. And the other block is a crafting monitor, which will show you all the crafting that is being done right now, which right now it's not, nothing is happening, so it doesn't show anything. So let me quickly redo this whole setup. I decided to use a mystical agriculture furnace, but it could have been any other furnace or even some other block. So what I will do is I will place this furnace in here. I will place the importer underneath, because this is something you need to get items out of the system. Then I will place the crafter on top, because specifically for this block at least, you gotta input stuff from the top and then output it from the bottom. Now, as you can see, it's pointing in this direction, which is not what we want at all. We want for this part to be pointing down, and this is kind of an arrow in here on the side as well, which can help you determine what side it's pointing towards. So let's get some wrench and start rotating this thing. Shift, right click, and okay, well, it was in the right position, but I clicked again. There we go. So now it's pointing towards this thing and everything will work just fine. But let's use this one since we already have a pattern in here. So now everything is ready. As long as this thing has some coal, the recipe will work. And if it's something that needs energy and doesn't need any coal at all to be powered up, then that's even better. So if I just remove all the glass from here, as you can see, I can craft some. I need 10 sand, which I have, and sand is being removed from my system, and glass is being crafted slowly but surely. And as you can see in here, 7 sand out of 10 is here, because 3 and now 4 have already been processed. And then this importer imports those items into the system. You don't really need it. If you don't have it here, it will just do the thing, and maybe later you can just manually pick it up and put it into the system, but that kind of undermines the whole point of it being automatic. And here I have another example just to show you how it can be used for something more advanced than a normal furnace. Right? This is a coke oven from Immersive Engineering. So coke oven has some very specific requirements. You actually can only input items from the top or from the sides and output them only from the bottom. So at the bottom I have an importer that imports the results back into the system. And here I have just a normal crafter. So what coke oven does, if you don't know, is if you put some normal coal into it, it will eventually turn it into coal coke, which is a lot more efficient than normal coal. So let's make a pattern for that. Let's just put 1 coal on the left side and 1 coal coke on the right side. Now this process does take quite a bit of time, so I'm just going to take it from the creative. And there we go. And now we have a pattern that says input 1 coal and expect 1 coal coke back. And let's use this crafter manager to put this pattern in here. And as you may notice, patterns look like, well, like this when they're in your inventory, but if you press shift, you will reveal what those patterns are for, and you will get the icon of the final result. Okay, so everything is ready. Now I can just press this button and let's craft 10 of them. And I don't have any coal though, but if I press shift and control, I can still press start anyway. And once you get enough coal, it will just do the thing, because this recipe, even though there isn't enough materials, it will be sort of in the queue of the system. And as soon as you have materials, it will do the thing. And our first piece of coal coke was just made as well. And as you can see, 1 coal coke is in my system. So let's move on to the solderer. How can you automate the solderer? And let's actually use a more specific example. So I can now pretty much automatically make 1K storage parts. Let's also add some more of these basic resources that are necessary for it. But I wanna take it a step further. I wanna be able to make 4K storage parts now, and they require basic processors, which you can make in the solderer. And the solderer itself requires printed basic processors and printed silicon, so let's automate all of that. Okay, so starting with the basic processor. So let's press this button, and as you can see, this is how it assembles this pattern. And I think it'll work as well. It doesn't have to be in any specific order, and it will just know where to put these items. So here we have a pattern for a basic processor. Let's also make a pattern for the printed basic processor and for printed silicon. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put all of these patterns in here. And just real quick, let me rebuild this system as well. So what you will need is a solderer, obviously. Let's just put it in here, kind of. A crafter pointing towards the solderer, an importer to import items out of it, and it all needs to be connected to the system. So for example, this crafter is connected because it's adjacent to the solderer, which is connected to the system. And that's it, right? So pretty simple stuff. And now I can make everything. I can make everything necessary for the basic processor as well as basic processor itself. So as long as I have redstone, iron, and silicon in my system, I will be able to make those things. So let's craft 10 basic processors. Start. And now it's gonna do it step by step. So first of all, it's gonna craft 10 of these printed basic processors. Then I guess it's gonna craft 10 printed silicons, and then it's gonna craft the final product. You can obviously speed up this process by making more crafters with more solderers. So for example, I can just take one of these patterns and move it over here, and it's gonna be doing it at the same time. I'm just gonna do the other thing, which is use speed upgrades. So as you can see, there's 4 slots for different upgrades. And with 4 upgrades in the solderer, it's a pretty fast process. So now it's already making the final product all by itself, all automatically. But once again, remember to assemble the correct pattern. I messed up once with my advanced processors, and instead of having printed advanced processors in here, I had just a normal diamond, and it wasn't working. But it doesn't tell you error, you have the wrong material. No, it doesn't know any better. So you might have a lot of headache trying to figure out what's not working if you make a simple error like that. So be careful with that, and just use not enough items. So we are almost done. Let's just set up a recipe for a 4K storage part now, just like this. And does it need anything else? Nope, just basic processors, quartz, redstone. System knows how to make all of these things, including 1K storage part. So let me just put this into this crafter. Good. Okay, now let's craft some 4K storage parts. So it will essentially have to make everything from the very beginning. I'm actually lacking something, so let's make like 3 of them instead of 10. And now it's just doing all of these things, right? It's smelting glass for sand, still turning coal into coal coke. And everything is being crafted, slowly but surely. Now there's already 9 1K storage parts, and basic processors are coming along. A lot of them. It needs 4 for each of these recipes. So now it has 12, so that's all it needs. 4K storage parts should be ready. But it says no machine found. What are you talking about? This is just a normal recipe. You don't need any machine. Oh yes, of course, this is just such a simple error as well. This is not a processing recipe. Recipes for a solderer are processing. Recipes for something like, furnace, for smelting and for other things, this is processing. This was just a normal recipe. So I can do it just like this without processing checked. And now everything should be working. I will also mention that you can actually override patterns. So for example, I could have just taken this pattern, placed it in here,